Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. Browsing Facebook Marketplace has become a favorite pastime of mine. As a collector always on the hunt for unique treasures and oddities, I love discovering those hidden gems among the everyday listings for used furniture and clothing. It thrills me to uncover mysterious artifacts and antiques with unknown histories. Most turn out to be disappointingly ordinary, but the potential treasures keep me endlessly scrolling through each listing. Last Tuesday night, I came across a post that immediately grabbed my attention. The photo showed a weathered wooden box, about the size of a shoebox, sealed shut with a giant rusted iron lock and hinges. Its aged wood was warped and splintered with no markings or writing visible. The seller provided no details about its contents, stating only that it had been discovered sealed in a barn and untouched for over 50 years. My mind raced with possibilities, imagining what could be inside. Cash hidden decades ago, ancient artifacts, love letters from a bygone era. The mystery immediately hooked me. I had to know what was inside this time capsule. I messaged the seller and we agreed on a price of $100 if I picked it up that night. Around 8 p.m., I pulled up to a modest ranch house on the outskirts of town. An elderly man greeted me holding the box gingerly in his wrinkled hands. He mentioned again finding it long ago sealed away and untouched in his barn. With the exchange made, I carefully placed the box on the passenger seat and drove home eagerly. Under the bright lights in my kitchen, I inspected the box further. The dark wood felt rough and brittle in my hands as I turned it over looking for any hints of its origins. The iron lock was so rusted I knew I would need to break it open. I grabbed a drill from the garage and got to work puncturing through the ancient mechanism. As the lock finally relinquished its hold, my hands trembled, slightly prying open the lid. This sealed box could contain anything. Photos of long-forgotten ancestors. Secret diaries. My heart pounded as I peeled back the wood. Sitting inside was an ornate bronze talisman on a heavy chain. My eyebrows furrowed in curiosity. It wasn't at all what I expected. I carefully lifted it out, handling the delicate bronze work. The talisman felt solid and heavy in my palm, about the size of a pocket watch. I turned it over, inspecting the detailed etching. Unfamiliar symbols covered both sides, surrounding ominous carved eyes that seemed to stare through me. I set the talisman gently on the table to get a closer look. As I leaned in, an uneasy feeling suddenly washed over me. The eyes now seemed to watch my every move. The temperature of the room felt like it instantly dropped 20 degrees. Goosebumps prickled my arms, and the fine hairs on the back of my neck stood at attention. There was a palpable shift in the atmosphere that I couldn't rationally explain. I straightened up and backed several steps away from the table. The talisman continued glaring from where I left it. I couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that had engulfed the room. The bronze work now seemed to emit a heavy, ominous energy. I knew then that this was no ordinary trinket, but something ancient and enchanted. Whatever long-forgotten magic it contained did not belong in my hands. I needed to get rid of it immediately. Gingerly, I picked the chain up by the very end and placed the talisman back into its wooden prison. I drove directly to a secluded spot by the lake I knew well. The sun was just peeking above the trees as I hurriedly made my way to the end of the dock box in hand. Saying a quick prayer, I tossed the box with all my strength into the calm morning water. It landed with a distant splash, disrupting the stillness of the glassy lake. I watched the ripples spread until it sank from view to the murky depths below. The heavy feeling that permeated the air back home lifted instantly. I took my first deep breath since opening the box. Finally free of its paralyzing grip, I strolled slowly back to my car, processing the morning's events. I still cannot explain what happened or the effect the talisman had on me. But I know now there are some mysteries that should remain unsolved. As thrilling as it was to hold a magical relic, its power was far beyond my control or comprehension. I don't regret purchasing the box, but its contents end up being more adventure than I ever bargained for. The lake can keep those secrets buried forever now. Though I'll continue hunting for unique treasures online, I'll steer clear of anything that seems cursed. My brief encounter with the talisman's ancient magic was enough unusual mystery to last me a lifetime. I'll never forget the day I bought that vintage leather jacket online. What started as an innocent clothing purchase ended up turning into a bizarre and terrifying ordeal. I discovered something truly sinister hidden within its lining that changed my perception of secondhand shopping forever. It all began when I stumbled upon a listing during one of my regular searches for retro fashion deals. As soon as I saw the photos of the asymmetric 1950s motorcycle jacket, I felt a surge of excitement. It looked so flawlessly vintage and was exactly my style. The seller described it as 100% authentic leather, a real relic from the golden age of Rebel Cool. Better yet, the bidding remained under $50, an unbelievable price for such a unique retro find. I eagerly placed an offer, hoping my modest budget would be enough to win. Over the next week, I kept increasing my bid, wanting that jacket more desperately each day. To my delight, I ultimately won the auction at just $68. It felt like purchasing a priceless fashion treasure for pennies. When the package finally arrived nearly 2 weeks later, I tore into it with trembling hands. The retro jacket inside was even more gorgeous than it appeared online. As soon as I slipped it on, I was transported back to the 1950s, feeling like the epitome of a badass biker chick. It fit me perfectly too, hugging every curve as if custom tailored for my body. Twirling in front of the mirror, I began imagining all the vintage outfits I could create. This was easily the coolest article of clothing I had ever owned. The more I admired myself, the more I wondered why such a flawless jacket sold so cheap. There had to be some kind of mistake. It was on about my 10th vain trip to admire the jacket and the reflection that my hand casually slid into the right pocket. I expected it to be empty, but suddenly felt my fingers brush against something inside. Confused, I grasped the mystery object, some kind of small plastic bag. My pulse quickened as I slowly withdrew my hand to reveal a tiny Ziploc-style bag. It was tightly knotted shut, and clearly not just random trash left behind. What could possibly be inside this bag that the seller forgot to remove? I had an ominous feeling of impending dread. Morbid curiosity overcame me, and I knew I had to find out what was in this hidden pocket package. With trembling fingers, I carefully worked open the tight-knotted seal. Peering down into the bag, its contents made my blood run cold. It was filled nearly halfway with a powdery white substance that I instantly recognized as illegal drugs. Shock coursed through me as I stood frozen, clutching the bag of mystery narcotics. Why was this concealed in my new jacket? What was I supposed to do now? My mind spun imagining scenarios of getting arrested just for having made contact with the bag. I couldn't return the jacket without admitting what I had found. Panic flooded my shaking body as I tried to figure out how to get the drugs away from myself. In a frightened daze, I stumbled to the kitchen and gingerly swept the powder back into the baggie, triple-checking it was fully sealed shut. I couldn't risk having any evidence escape. Clutching the incriminating bag, I rushed back to my bedroom closet to find a hiding spot. I buried the loaded Ziploc deep inside an old shoebox, underneath leftover junk I never touch. Out of sight, out of mind. At least that's what I desperately hoped. But I couldn't stop envisioning the bag of mystery powder mere feet away as I lay in bed that night. Thoughts of being discovered with illegal substances and hauled off to jail plagued me. What exactly were those drugs, and why had they been stashed inside my auction jacket? Was the seller somehow using online clothing sales to secretly traffic narcotics right under the noses of unsuspecting buyers like myself? I barely slept a wink with the anxiety of having those drugs so close yet so terrifyingly incriminating. As soon as daylight crept in, I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to get rid of the bag immediately. I was positive it had traces directly leading back to me now. Dawn had barely broken as I shoved on gloves and retrieved the ominous shoebox from its hiding place. Gripping the unopened package rigidly under my arm, I slipped out the front door into the hazy morning light. I scanned the area to make sure no one witnessed the suspicious box clutched against my side as I walked briskly toward a construction site 2 blocks over. My pulse roared in my ears as I approached their large metal dumpster around back, praying it would be deserted this early. Holding my breath, I quickly flung open the heavy lid and launched the entire shoebox inside. I watched it tumble down into the trash heap before grabbing a rotting plank to shove on top just to be sure it sank from view. Only after speed walking nearly all the way home did I finally exhale, lungs aching. But despite the drugs now being far from my home, I couldn't shake the lingering unease. Had I just destroyed potential evidence? Could authorities somehow trace the bag back to me? I tried to calm my frenzied thoughts, hoping I could cut off all connection to the seller and pretend the whole ordeal never happened. But the memory still haunts me, knowing I brought illegal and potentially dangerous substances into my home completely unknowingly. The chilling experience taught me to be far more cautious when buying secondhand clothes online. You truly never know where pre-owned items originated or what could be concealed inside. I'll stick to new mall purchases from now on. The thrill of scoring vintage deals just isn't worth the risks. That fateful jacket purchase opened my eyes to hidden dangers I never considered. But I'll certainly never make the mistake of buying online mystery garments again. My love affair with designer handbags started early. As a young girl, I would press my nose against the display windows of luxury boutiques, enraptured by the glossy Louis Vuitton and Prada bags perched on satin pillows. They represented the height of sophistication, far beyond my middle-class means. I dreamed that one day, I too could caress those buttery leathers and gleaming gold hardware. Owning just one became my ultimate fashion fantasy. In college, I got my first taste when I scored a vintage Louis Vuitton Speedy on eBay using 6 months of weekend job savings. Strutting around campus with it on my arm made me feel like $1,000,000. I babied that bag for years until it finally disintegrated, the canvas cracking and leather trim peeling from overuse. After graduating and entering the professional world, I would slowly start to build my luxury collection. I picked up discounted Coach and Kate Spade bags at the outlet mall. With a big promotion at work, I treated myself to a brand new Neverfull as a reward for my hard work. But the ultimate prize remained out of reach, the Prada Classic Flap. I followed Prada releases obsessively online, watching prices climb higher every season. But even with my stable income, I could barely afford one of their keychains, much less a $5,000 handbag. I scored consignment shops, but even the most tattered bags retained astronomical prices due to their cult status. Owning an authentic Prada handbag became my white whale. Then one day, a Facebook ad caught my eye. A woman named Amanda selling a pristine black caviar leather medium classic flap with gold hardware for only $500. The photos looked too good to be true. Amanda claimed she had received it as a gift from an ex-boyfriend but wanted to erase reminders of him. Her profile seemed normal, filled with everyday posts dating back over a year. My mind raced at the thought of scoring any authentic Prada for such a bargain price. There had to be something wrong with it, a repair or defect tanking its value. But I had to take the risk. A deal like this could be once in a lifetime. We arranged to meet that Saturday at a cafe downtown so I could inspect it in person. When I arrived, an elegantly dressed woman stood waiting with a Prada bag just like the photos. My breath caught as she handed it over. It looked flawless, without any visible imperfections. I slowly turned it over, carefully examining every inch of the buttery caviar leather, flawless stitching, and shiny hardware. Amanda assured me it had barely even been used. I glanced inside to match up the authenticity card with a hologram sticker, overflowing with excitement. In that euphoric state, I overlooked tiny details like the sloppily stamped logo inside the bag. I practically skipped to my car, giddy with my unicorn find. For the next week, I felt like royalty, letting friends and coworkers fawn over my new Prada. Their oohs and ahs over the chain strap's perfect drape, the quilting's intricate symmetry, the CC Turnlock's solid click filled me with pride. I posed for photos with different outfits, relishing the visible envy. In the back of my mind, I felt uneasy about the deal being too good to be true, but I pushed those doubts away, refusing to diminish my triumph. That illusion came crashing down a few weeks later at the consignment shop. As the clerk examined my bag under bright lights, she immediately frowned. Despite quality construction, it was undeniably a fake. My stomach dropped as she pointed out the uneven stitching, plastic-like leather, and other inaccuracies. I felt like the world's biggest fool. Of course, Amanda had disappeared from Facebook right after getting my money. Hot tears of anger at myself welled up. How could I let irrational excitement blind me to clear warning signs? In my rush to finally attain my fashion holy grail, I ignored my common sense. and now $500 of hard-earned savings was gone. Over the next few weeks, I experienced all the stages of grief. First, burning humiliation when anyone mentioned my new bag, forcing me to admit it was counterfeit. Then anguish and regret at my foolishness. Eventually, anger focused on Amanda fruitlessly reporting her fake profile. Lastly, acceptance of an expensive lesson learned the hardest way possible. For a time, I swore off buying anything secondhand, overwhelmed by self-doubt and embarrassment. But gradually the pain faded to a dull ache as I regained perspective. Plenty of ethical resellers exist online. I just need to proceed with greater caution, ask detailed questions, closely examine photos, walk away at any uncertainty. Authentic luxury goods are worth the wait and patience. With time, I will save up to buy a Prada directly from the boutique, treasuring it so much more for waiting and working towards that goal the right way. And when admirers stop to compliment my bag, I can proudly confirm it's the real deal. My love for luxury fashion remains, but this painful experience taught me that bargains and designer rarely mix well. While I still browse online deals, exciting prices now elicit wariness rather than giddy excitement. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Moving forward, I enter any purchase with eyes wide open, not letting those 3 tempting words distract from dollar signs. Too good to be true. When I stumbled upon that vintage doll listed for sale on Facebook Marketplace, I should have known it was too good to be true. The seller described it as an authentic 1920s doll in pristine condition, handmade with incredible realism and detail. According to her, it had been passed down in her family for generations. The asking price was unbelievably low for what she claimed it was. I negotiated her down even further, unable to pass up the deal of a lifetime. Oh, how I wish I had listened to my instincts and left that wretched thing behind. The package arrived just 2 days later. I excitedly tore open the box and lifted out the antique doll buried in mounds of packing peanuts. She was even more stunning than I imagined. The doll had porcelain skin, intricately hand-painted blue eyes, and long, luxurious raven black hair just perfect for gently brushing. Her faded pink silk dress looked like it came right out of the 1920s. I had no doubt I had scored a rare gem. I proudly arranged her in my antique curio cabinet in the living room so I could admire her porcelain beauty whenever I passed by. That's when things started to feel off. The temperature would suddenly drop without warning, sending an eerie chill down my spine. Faint whispers seemed to echo from empty rooms. Shadows danced at the corner of my eye. It was subtle at first, but gradually intensified as the days passed. Within a week, I could no longer dismiss the unsettling activity as a figment of my imagination or tricks of an old house. Doors began slamming shut violently without cause. I often heard heavy disembodied footsteps creaking down the hallway late at night. Furniture slid across the hardwood floor entirely on its own, leaving deep scratch marks I could not explain. The air felt thick and heavy, almost suffocating in its intensity. I no longer felt alone in the old farmhouse. A menacing presence lurked in the darkness, watching and waiting. And that doll, its hand-painted glass eyes seemed to follow my every move. The haunting continued escalating in the following weeks. Whispers grew louder and more insistent, though I could not make out any words. Flickering shadows darted rapidly across my vision, disappearing when I turned my head. I often detected a faint, sickly sweet floral perfume in rooms that should not smell like anything at all. The doll also began leaving me bizarre gifts. My missing earrings and other trinkets would mysteriously reappear at its feet on the cabinet shelf. But the most terrifying incidents happened at night when I lay in bed struggling to sleep. The doll's porcelain face would appear floating in the darkness, eyes open, staring directly into my soul. In my restless dreams, the young girl from the old photographs would visit me. Her piercing blue eyes silently screamed as she desperately reached out with clasped hands. I tried to run each night, but my feet felt mired in thick mud. Every evening I'd wake up in a pool of cold sweat, heart thundering in my chest, unable to catch my breath. I dreaded the setting of the sun when the haunting would begin anew. During the day, I begged my husband to get rid of the doll, certain it was the root of the problem. But he just brushed me off, convinced I was imagining things due to stress or an overactive imagination. He never saw the unnatural things I did, never felt the sinister presence taking over our home. No one else saw it either. I knew eventually I would need to take matters into my own hands. So late one evening, when my husband was away on another business trip, I decisively wrapped the doll in an old quilt, gently placed it in a cardboard box, hid it securely shut, and resolved to donate it to the local historical society museum in the morning. As I carried the box downstairs, it rattled violently in my hands as if something within was trying to break free. I could have sworn I heard a faint crying come from inside. For a brief moment, I reconsidered and nearly fetched the doll back upstairs. But I steeled my nerves. I needed to be rid of it. As I pulled out of the driveway the next morning headed for the museum, the box again shook and bounced on the passenger seat next to me. Muffled, high-pitched wailing emanated from within. Beads of sweat ran down my forehead as I pushed the gas pedal to the floor, desperate to get the doll out of my possession. Suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, an 18-wheeler barreled into my lane, horn blaring. Tires squealed against pavement as it careened towards my compact Sen. I jerked the steering wheel with all my might, but it was too late. The massive grille collided full force with the passenger side of my vehicle, the deafening crunch of metal and shattering glass filling my ears as the car crumpled like paper. When I finally awoke 3 days later in the sterile hospital room, I immediately screamed out asking if they had found the doll. Did it survive the wreckage? Was it still at the crash site or at my totaled car? The nurses tried to calm me down, claiming no doll had been recovered. Once released from the hospital, I frantically searched every corner of the house for the doll, needing proof it was finally gone. But it was nowhere to be found. The only trace was an old newspaper clipping hidden in the back of the empty curio cabinet, showing a young girl who died in 1928 under mysterious circumstances. Her photo matched the haunting spirit's face precisely. In the following weeks, the intense supernatural activity seemed to gradually lessen in the absence of the doll. The temperature warming, the whispers fading away. I hoped I had escaped its evil curse. I even rented a storage unit and emptied the entire house looking for where it could have disappeared to, but it was simply gone. It's been over a month now since the accident, and I am starting to feel at peace once more. But some nights, I still sense that I'm being watched from the darkness. Catch glimpses of movement from the corner of my eye, a faint giggle when I walk by the vacant curio cabinet. The doll may be gone, but the shadows of its haunting will forever lurk in my mind. For now, I'm simply grateful to have escaped its insidious clutches. But how long will it let me be free? Where could it have vanished to? And who will be its next hapless victim when it inevitably resurfaces? The doll is out there somewhere, biding its time, waiting for the perfect opportunity to unleash its revenge once more. As a new mom, I was always looking for good deals on baby items, so I often browsed Facebook Marketplace. One night, a listing for a video baby monitor caught my eye. The seller was asking just $20 for a monitor that normally cost over $100. My friend Sam had found some amazing bargains on there, so I was eager to score one of my own. The photos showed a monitor that looked gently used, and the seller had glowing reviews. I messaged him right away and arranged to meet the next afternoon. When I saw the ad for the used baby monitor pop up in my local Facebook group, I jumped at the chance to save some money. As a new mom struggling to make ends meet, I couldn't justify spending over $200 on a brand new system. The seller, Jeff, seemed nice enough in his messages. He explained that his kids had simply outgrown the need for the monitor, so he was looking to sell it for cheap. We agreed to meet that weekend at his house on the outskirts of town to complete the transaction. I'll never forget pulling up to Jeff's home, a modest 2-story colonial. I clutched the $40 cash in my palm, excited to see if the monitor worked as well as he claimed. Jeff invited me inside and led me up to the nursery where the system was still plugged in. He powered it on to show me the camera panned the room smoothly, and the sound came through loud and clear on the parent unit. The video quality was crystal clear, an upgrade from the grainy monitor I used for my firstborn years earlier. After verifying it was in working condition, I paid Jeff and headed home eager to test it out. That first night using the monitor was amazing. I could see every detail of my newborn son Danny sleeping soundly in his crib. The night vision mode let me check on him even after shutting off the lights. Over the next few weeks, the monitor became an indispensable tool for our family. My husband and I took turns carrying around the parent unit so we could instantly see and hear Danny if he cried or fussed. We even started placing it in whatever room we were in so we could casually glance at the screen and see our baby boy snoozing nearby. One morning, my husband called me into the bedroom, his face etched with concern. He pointed silently at the monitor's display. Instead of our son's crib, it showed a dim, cluttered room we didn't recognize. No matter which buttons my husband pressed, the view didn't change. My chest tightened, pulse racing. Had we been hacked? Was somebody spying on us? I yanked the plug from the wall in a panic as my mind spun with terrifying scenarios. While my husband checked the locks around the house, I held our son close, petrified someone could be inside watching him. But we found nothing amiss. Once the fear subsided a bit, I tried to think rationally. Maybe this used monitor had a wiring issue or glitch. I pulled up the seller's page, planning to message him. But his profile had been deleted. My heart sank. There was something very wrong here. After some frantic research online about the model, I learned these monitors were susceptible to hacking via a hidden second camera inside, unknown to consumers. The realization slammed into me. Someone had been spying on us through this camera for months. All the times the view shifted or audio cut out now took on a chilling new meaning. Shaking with anger and violation, I immediately called the police. An officer came to take our statements and confiscated the monitor as evidence, though he said identifying the culprit could be difficult. In that moment, all I wanted was to find the sick stranger who had invaded our home and child's privacy for his own twisted purposes. Not knowing how long we were watched left me feeling exposed and powerless. In the following weeks, I became consumed with hypervigilance. I barely slept, compulsively checking doors and windows. My husband and I fought as I begged to move or buy an expensive security system. Knowing our family was preyed upon cast a heavy pall. I felt like I failed as a mother by not protecting my son from this hidden predator. Desperate for answers, I posted warnings online about the seller, hoping to find other victims. Soon I was contacted by a woman who described an eerily similar situation. She had bought the same monitor model from the same man a town over, also with a secret camera. Together, we took this vital lead to the police. Finally, they had enough to identify a suspect, a local man who had modified and sold baby monitors with hidden cameras for his own demented gratification. After months of hunting, he was arrested. In interrogation, the creep admitted to accessing the feeds remotely for twisted pleasure. I still feel nauseous imagining how long he could have been leering into our son's nursery, violating that innocent space. Thankfully, he took a plea deal, sparing us from reliving it at trial. While I relieve he's behind bars, the damage is done. I still find myself compulsively peeking into the baby's room as he sleeps, worried someone could be watching. No parent should feel unsafe in their own home. I hope sharing our frightening tale prevents this from happening to another innocent family. I was low on cash and decided to try making a little extra by selling an old bike I had taken up space in my garage. It was a few years old but still in pretty good shape, so I figured I could get a decent price for it. I posted an ad on one of those popular buy and sell websites, making sure to include some nice photos showing off the bike from all angles and describing it as a great around-town cruiser for getting to work or running errands. Within a couple of days, I got an email from someone named Mike interested in buying my bike. We went back and forth over email negotiating a fair price and settled on $120, which I was happy with. Mike seemed nice enough through our messages and asked intelligent questions about the bike, so I didn't think twice when he suggested meeting that weekend at the park down the street from my house. I agreed to the time and place, thinking it was a public spot so I'd feel safe, though in hindsight that was pretty silly. When I got to the park, Mike was already waiting on a bench near the fountain. He looked normal enough, average height and build with sort of nondescript features, wearing jeans and a plain shirt. We exchanged basic greetings and some small talk about the weather and bike markets. When Mike asked if he could take it for a test ride around the park loop, I didn't see any reason not to allow that. What could go wrong letting him do a quick lap to test out the gears and brakes? Famous last words. I plopped down on the bench to wait, figuring it would take him 5 minutes or so to pedal around. As more time passed, I started absent-mindedly scanning the park. Parents playing with kids, joggers on the path, dogs chasing frisbees across the grass. After 10 minutes, I began feeling uneasy, but told myself Mike was probably just being extra cautious and thorough on his test ride. By the 15-minute mark, when there was still no sign of him headed my way, my stomach sank as I realized he clearly wasn't coming back. I jumped up in a panic and began searching all around the park, scanning the loop path and peeking into every picnic area. Of course, there was no trace of Mike or the bike. My mind was racing, angry at myself for handing over my valuable possession to a complete stranger based on some harmless-seeming email exchanges. I felt like such an idiot allowing this to happen. Maybe I could file a police report, but I doubted cops would be able to track down one random thief joyriding around with a used bicycle. The reality began to sink in that I was simply out of bike and the cash I had hoped to make selling it. I trudged home, replaying the situation over and over, wondering how I could have been so stupidly trusting. Guess it was an expensive lesson learned the hard way. Over the next few weeks, I found myself compulsively scanning the buy and sell sites to see if Mike would try to list my bike for sale again. But no luck, which I suppose wasn't surprising since he probably wanted to lay low. The $120 I almost made would have come in very handy right about now, as work hours had been cut and I was strapped for cash. I cursed that scammer Mike nearly every day as I struggled to make ends meet. About a month later, I was cutting through the grocery store parking lot when a bike chained to the rack caught my eye. It looked strangely familiar, even with scratched up paint and missing decals. I moved in for a closer look and my jaw dropped. This was my bike. That sneaky thief Mike had tried disguising it, but couldn't hide the unique dents and scratches that could only come from years under my ownership. A wave of anger coursed through me that this guy had the nerve to brazenly ride my stolen property around town. But then a devious thought crossed my mind. Two could play at this game. Without thinking twice, I broke the flimsy chain and jumped on my bike, pedaling fast as I could for home. Finders keepers at this point, right? What Mike did wasn't legal either, so I felt justified reclaiming what was rightfully mine, even if my methods were also questionable. Consider us even now. Yeah, so then I decided to, lay low for a while rather than try to sell the bike again. Mike clearly knew how to lurk online waiting to take advantage of unsuspecting people. At least I had my bike back, even if I still missed out on the cash. Definitely learned to be way more careful in the future about who to trust. And I realized I should avoid meeting strangers, especially in isolated places. Never expected a simple bike sale could turn into such an ordeal. But lesson learned, no more getting ripped off. I celebrated my small victory in outsmarting the punk who tried to pull one over on me. All's well that ends well, I guess, though I'll be on high alert anytime I attempt to sell anything online again. Looking back, I never should have sold my Nintendo Switch on that online marketplace site. I wish I had trusted my instincts when the buyer seemed off from the start. Letting a complete stranger into my home just to make a quick buck was an incredibly stupid mistake, one that could have ended much worse than it did. I played the terrifying encounter over and over in my mind, mortified at my own stupidity. The idea to sell my Switch seemed smart at first. I hadn't used the thing in months and figured someone else could get more enjoyment out of it. Money was a bit tight, so I thought I'd make back some cash by letting it go. I took some photos, posted a listing for a fair price, and waited for potential buyers to reach out. It didn't take long before I got an interested message from someone named Alex. After a brief back and forth, we arranged for him to come by my house the next evening so I could show him the console worked properly before he paid. In hindsight, I should have suggested meeting somewhere public instead. But at the time, doing the exchange at my home seemed the most convenient. As soon as I opened the door and saw Alex, something seemed off. He was wearing sunglasses and had the hood of his sweatshirt pulled up, obscuring most of his face. It was a warm, sunny day, not the kind of weather that warranted such clothes. When I hesitantly welcomed him in, he walked right past me without saying a word, his head swiveling around like he was casing the place. I demonstrated the Switch for him, powering it on and letting him scroll through some games. I thought showing it worked properly would get him to buy it quickly so he'd leave, but he lingered, making strange humming noises under his breath as his fingers examined every inch of the console. The humming combined with his hidden face gave me chills. After inspecting the Switch, he looked right at me and